Welcome back to the channel. What you're looking at here is what I think might be some sick bees. One of the hives seems to be more productive while the other isn't, and I'm finding bees walking on the grass, walking on the rocks, not flying around, and I found maybe 15 or 20 bees dead on the walkway leading up to the hives. So I contacted Mike from Rescue Bees and asked him a little bit about it, and he suggested I do an inspection, see what I find. So here I'm going into the second hive. This hive seems to be a little bit more, well, much more productive than the other one as far as bees coming and going. I put a bee excluder in here to minimize the entrance, just so they'll be able to protect the entrance a little bit better. And I start taking apart the roof, took off the top feeder. Had an ant problem. You'll see that in another video, how we dealt with the ant problem. But as I take the cover off, there's plenty of bees, a lot of movement, a lot of activity, and I started at one end with some of the empty boards. This board just had some bees hanging on the top. The second one, this is only 3 or 4 days after we had the bees installed. We find that they're already starting to draw wax and build comb. On the next one, you'll see it's about softball size, two pieces of softball size comb being built. During the inspection, I did see the queen. She was there. She was laying eggs. I noticed that there were some eggs, some larvae that I could see, and the girls inside were being very productive. The stores had plenty of pollen, nectar. There was still some unhatched brood, which was great. As I look at each one of these top boards, boards, you'll see that they're very heavy with bees. They seem to be very active with what they're doing. Now, with the sugar syrup, on the feeder, after 4 days it was 75% gone, which was great. Now, the other hive, Hive 2, very little wax was being drawn. Didn't see the queen, but I did see some larvae. Couldn't really see any eggs. There was pollen, but very little nectar being stored. And the sugar syrup was only 10% used. And inside the bee feeder there were a few dead bees. But we didn't have an ant problem. No ants there, so that's great. So talking to Mike, he gave me a solution. What we're going to see now is we're going to come back a couple days later, excuse me, and we're going to again go into the second hive, and I'm going to look for a board that has a good amount of capped brood and some stores. So here I am going through. I'm still doing an inspection. I'm still finding. I found the queen again. Everyone's very productive, but I had to go in and find one board that had capped brood and stores that I could transfer. And what he wanted me to do is he wanted me to shake off the bees and make sure the queen wasn't there first. Then shake off the bees and put the board into the nuke box he gave me, close that hive up, and then put that board into the other hive. So I think I looked at this board and I found the queen on one side, so I put it back in, and I looked for the next populated board that had capped brood as well as stores. Now, I don't know if I'm doing this too much, but it just seems like when I put smoke on top of the hive, the bees seem to go down into the hive, and it seemed to be less of a chance for me to hurt any of them when I'm using the hive tool to separate and pull out the board. So here I've found the next board, which I think has a good amount of capped brood, and I know that the queen is on the other board, so I'm going to take this out, take a look at it, ensure the queen hasn't moved over to it, and use that as the board I will put into the other hive. Looking at the board, I found a good amount of capped brood. The larva, there was some larva and eggs, and I'm sure that when I transfer it, that they'll be cared for by the bees as well. So making sure that there is the queen did not move over to this board. I'm looking at it to be sure, and now I'm going to get ready to remove the bees, because you can't bring the bees from that hive to this hive. They'll be rejected by the hive and could cause problems. So here I'm going to do a shake, and shake all the bees into the box. There were a few that still hung on to the board, but I put them into the nuc box. A little smoke to calm them down, and then moved everything over, moved everything close together, and I had a empty board that I'm going to drop in its place. Everything gets slid over nice and uniform, and then I'm going to take the empty board and put it in the space that was remaining because I took out the capped brood. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in about a week and see how well they've been getting along. When I was in here doing that inspection, I noticed that we had 4 boards that they were already drawing brand new comb. One of them was probably a third full, and the others looked like that first board with like 2 softball size combs already being drawn out, which was great. Right now, this hive is going through a feeder a day of sugar syrup. We're still waiting for the honey flow to start, so they're doing very well. Put the board on corner like that so I could slide and not crush any of the bees. You'll see the top of the board looks a little bit brown. You'll watch a video that I'm going to be making shortly talking about the ant problem, and that brown is cinnamon, which amazed me how this solution solved the ant problem. So I reposition the top feeder, make sure So you notice there's not as many bees on top of this hive as the others. I don't know if it's the population might be different, but like I said, what caused this whole solution to the activity problem is that there have been a lot of bees dying off. Now those are just the bees that are near the hive. I don't know if they're flying off and dying en route to or route back from getting nectar, but and I've only used smoke once so far, so you can definitely see a difference in the population on top of the hive. So here I am, I'm going to remove an empty board. No, I'm going to look at, this is the only board in the hive that has new drawn up comb. Everything else was foundation base that came with the nuke. But just that little spot is all the comb that they've drawn up in the whole hive. Now, I've changed the sugar syrup on top of the hive a couple of times because of I don't want it sitting out there too long, but they generally only eat 10%, 15%. Now what I've already done is, you see on the next to the hive is the empty board. I've already taken the empty board out and put in the new board of brood. I look in there, like I said, only 10% is gone, and I see several bees that may have drowned in the sugar syrup, whereas the other hive I didn't see any, and I really don't know why. But we're going to close this up, and I'll be back in a week. Hopefully we'll see good news and a big change in this hive's activity and population. So if you're enjoying the channel, please click on subscribe, like the videos, and if you have any comments, questions, please put it in the comments section. And I'll see you in a week when we see how the production has increased.